Ma'am, I don't know how you got past security, but the public entrance doesn't open until 8. The words echoed down the empty corridor of Ashford County Courthouse. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting pale shadows across marble floors, still wet from the night janitor's mop. The woman in the gray cashmere sweater stopped walking. She did not turn around. Behind her, expensive leather shoes clicked closer. Closer. The man's cologne arrived before he did. Something sharp, aggressive, meant to announce presence before words could. "Did you hear me?" His voice carried the particular edge of someone unused to being ignored. "I said the public entrance doesn't open until 8. That means you need to leave. Now." She turned slowly. Spencer Aldridge saw a black woman in her early 50s. Plain clothes, no jewelry, no briefcase with a law firm's logo, no lanyard with credentials, just a cognac leather bag over one shoulder, and eyes that looked at him like she was counting something. He had no idea she was counting him. Spencer Aldridge had just threatened to remove a sitting circuit court judge from her own courthouse. And in approximately 93 minutes, he would be standing in her courtroom, watching her take the bench, realizing that the woman he'd tried to throw out was about to preside over his career-defining case. But right now, in this empty hallway, at 6:47 in the morning, he saw only what he expected to see: a black woman who didn't belong. If you're new here, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what happens next. Lorraine Whitmore had been a judge for 12 years. Before that, a prosecutor for 8. Before that, a public defender for 6. She had seen men like Spencer Aldridge in every courtroom she'd ever entered. Young, expensive, convinced that their suits made them untouchable. She said nothing. Spencer stepped closer. Close enough that she could see the slight tremor in his left eyelid. Caffeine, probably. Or nerves, before a big trial. She filed that detail away automatically, the way she'd filed away thousands of details over 26 years of legal practice. "I'm going to need you to come with me to the security desk," he said. "We'll get this sorted out. I walked through security already. The staff entrance isn't for—" He stopped. Recalibrated. "How did you get through the staff entrance?" "I used my access card." "You have an access card?" "Yes." Spencer's jaw tightened. She watched him cycle through possibilities. Maintenance worker, cleaning staff, maybe someone's assistant who'd borrowed a badge. Each assumption flickered across his face like a slideshow of bias. "May I see it?" Lorraine reached into her bag. Her fingers found the familiar plastic rectangle, its edges slightly worn from 3 years of daily use. The photo was blurry. The printer had malfunctioned the day she'd renewed it, but the name was clear enough. She handed it to him. Spencer examined the card like he was searching for forgery. He turned it over, turned it back, squinted at the photo, then at her face. "This doesn't have a department listed. Internal access cards issued before June 2022 aren't required to display department codes." Ashford County Administrative Order 2021-14. Spencer's eyes narrowed. That wasn't something a cleaning worker would know. That wasn't something most lawyers would know. "Who are you?" "Someone who's going to be late for work if this conversation continues." She held out her hand for the card. He didn't give it back. 47 minutes earlier, Lorraine had left her house in the dark. This was ritual. For 12 years, she'd arrived at the courthouse 2 hours before anyone expected her. Time to read files. Time to review precedent. Time to prepare the questions that would separate truth from performance in her courtroom. Her kitchen was immaculate. 3 sticky notes aligned perfectly on the counter. Weekly schedule, to-do list, emergency contacts. The emergency contacts were laminated. She replaced them every 6 months, whether the numbers had changed or not. In her bag, 2 pens, blue and red. A leather notebook she'd carried since law school. No pencils. Pencils could be erased. Lorraine didn't trust things that could be erased. The drive to the courthouse took 14 minutes at this hour. She parked in her usual spot, space 7, northeast corner, closest to the staff entrance. She'd chosen it years ago because the security camera had a clear sightline. Documentation mattered, even in small things. Especially in small things. Boyd Kemper was waiting at the gate, night shift security. She'd seen him hundreds of times over the years, always with the same half-asleep expression, always holding the same foam cup of gas station coffee. Today, when he saw her approaching, something changed. He set down his cup, straightened his spine, stepped directly into her path. ID. No greeting, no good morning, not even ma'am. Just the single syllable, delivered like a command. Lorraine stopped. She had learned, over decades, to notice the moments when the rules changed, when courtesy evaporated, when she stopped being a person and became a problem to be solved. This was one of those moments. She reached for her access card. Boyd took it, held it up to the light, compared the blurry photo to her face, compared it again. This doesn't look right. It's the same card I've used for 3 years. Photo's not clear. The printer malfunctioned when it was issued. I filed a replacement request 3 months ago. I'm going to need to see something else. His eyes never left her face. Driver's license. Behind her, another car pulled into the lot. A silver sedan. Lorraine noted the license plate automatically. Florida tags, last 4 characters 7KLM. The driver's door opened, and Spencer Aldridge stepped out in his navy blue suit and silk tie. He walked toward the gate. Boyd glanced at him, nodded. "Morning, counselor." Spencer passed through without stopping, without showing ID, without a single question. Boyd turned back to Lorraine. "Ma'am, your license?" She counted the seconds. Noted the timestamp on her watch. 6:42 and 17 seconds. She would remember this. She handed over her driver's license. Boyd examined it with the same suspicion he'd shown the access card. He held it at arm's length, then close, then at arm's length again. His lips moved slightly as he read her name. 30 seconds passed. 40, a full minute. Finally, he handed both cards back. "All right, go ahead." No apology, no explanation, no acknowledgement that he'd just spent 1 minute and 47 seconds verifying her identity while waving a white man through in 0. Lorraine walked through the gate. The scanner beeped green, the same beep she heard every morning, the same confirmation that she belonged here, that she had always belonged here. But Boyd's eyes followed her all the way to the door, and when she glanced back, she saw him reaching for his radio. The file room opened to staff at 6:30. Lorraine needed the case materials for Aldridge and Bellamy versus City of Ashford, the civil rights trial scheduled to begin at 9. She had read the documents already, of course, multiple times, but she liked to review physical files on the morning of trial. Paper had a weight that digital files lacked. Paper reminded her that these were real people with real grievances, not just names on a screen. Janine Pratt sat behind the records counter, red nails clicking on a keyboard, eyes focused on a phone half hidden behind a stack of folders. "Good morning." Lorraine kept her voice neutral. "I need the case file for docket number 2024 CV 01187. Janine didn't look up. "Public records don't open until 9. "I'm not public. I'm requesting a file for review." Now Janine looked up. Her gaze traveled from Lorraine's simple flats to her gray sweater to her bare earlobes. The assessment took 3 seconds. The judgment took less. "And you are?" "Lorraine Whitmore." Janine typed something, waited, typed again. Her expression shifted from bored to skeptical. "I'm not finding you in the system. Try searching by position code or bar number." "I don't have time for this." Janine's smile was thin as paper. "The public entrance opens at 8. The records office opens at 9. You can come back then." "I'm not asking to come back. I'm asking you to do your job." The smile disappeared. "Excuse me?" "I gave you a name. I gave you alternative search parameters. Either you're unable to perform a basic database query or you're choosing not to." Janine's chair scraped back. She stood, and for a moment, Lorraine thought she might actually try to physically remove her from the counter. Then high heels clicked on marble, and everything got worse. Margot Bellamy entered the file room like she owned it. In a sense, she did. Aldridge and Bellamy was the largest law firm in Ashford County. They represented the city in civil matters, the hospital in malpractice suits, the school board in discrimination cases. They had been winning cases in this courthouse since before Lorraine had passed the bar. Margot herself was 63, impeccably dressed in a cream Chanel suit, carrying a Birkin bag that cost more than most people's cars. Her silver hair was styled in a precise bob. Her smile was the kind of smile that could foreclose on your house. "Janine, dear, I need the exhibit binders for Aldridge versus City of Ashford. We're in courtroom 4 today." "Right away, Ms. Bellamy." Janine didn't check the system, didn't ask for ID, didn't mention public hours or records requests. She simply stood, walked to a shelf behind her desk, and retrieved 3 thick binders already prepared and waiting. Margot turned, noticed Lorraine for the first time. Her eyes performed the same assessment Janine's had: clothes, jewelry, posture. The calculation was visible. Not a lawyer, not a colleague, not someone worth knowing. "Are you lost, honey?" Lorraine felt her pulse increase by exactly 3 beats per minute. She had been called honey before, by defense attorneys trying to rattle her, by witnesses who underestimated her, by cops who couldn't believe a black woman was asking them questions under oath. She had never gotten used to it. "No, I'm exactly where I need to be. Margot's smile tightened. Well, if you're here for the wrongful termination case, the family waiting area is on the first floor. Left at the elevator, past the vending machines. There's coffee if you get there early enough. Family waiting area, where defendants' relatives sat during trial, where people without law degrees waited to hear if their loved ones would see justice or watch it slip away. Lorraine opened her notebook, wrote the date, the time, Margot's name, the exact words, "Are you lost, honey?" and family waiting area. Margot watched her write. "What are you doing?" "Taking notes." "Notes about what?" "This conversation." Something shifted in Margot's expression. Not fear. Women like Margot didn't fear women like the one she thought Lorraine was, but uncertainty. The slightest crack in her composure. "I was only trying to help." "I didn't ask for help." "There's no need to be hostile." "I'm not hostile. I'm documenting." Before Margot could respond, footsteps echoed from the hallway. Spencer Aldridge appeared in the doorway, slightly out of breath, still holding Lorraine's access card. "Aunt Margot?" His voice was tight. "This is the woman I told you about. She used the staff entrance." Margot's eyes widened slightly. "The one from the parking lot?" "She has an access card, but it doesn't show a department. I think she might have borrowed it from someone. Or stolen it." Lorraine said nothing. She added Spencer's accusation to her notes. Spencer Aldridge suggested card was borrowed or stolen. Time, 6:51 a.m. "Let me see that card." Margot held out her hand. Lorraine hesitated. She had no obligation to show her credentials to a private attorney, and every instinct told her that giving Margot anything would only escalate the situation. But she was also curious. She wanted to see exactly how far this would go. She handed over the card. Margot examined it the same way Spencer had. Same squint at the photo. Same scrutiny of the name. Same failure to recognize a circuit court judge standing directly in front of her. This ID is irregular. The photo is barely visible. There's no department code, no expiration date visible. The expiration date is on the back. Margot flipped the card over, said nothing, flipped it back. "Who issued this?" "The Ashford County Court Administration Office, 3 years ago." "And what exactly is your role here?" The question hung in the air. Lorraine had a dozen answers. Circuit Court Judge, Division 4, the Honorable Lorraine Whitmore, who had presided over more than 4,000 cases and sent 17 people to prison for life. But she didn't owe this woman her resume. She didn't owe this woman anything. "I work here." "In what capacity?" "A capacity that allows me to access this building before public hours." Margot's jaw tightened. She was accustomed to answers, not evasions. Accustomed to deference, not defiance. "Spencer, call security." "Already did." Spencer pulled out his phone. "Boyd should be here any minute." Lorraine noted the time. 6:54. She had been in this file room for exactly 7 minutes. In that time, she had been refused service, condescended to, accused of theft, and now summoned security. She kept writing. Boyd Kemper arrived with his hand on his belt. Not on his weapon. Courthouse security didn't carry firearms inside the building, but on his radio, his keys, the various tools that allowed him to control situations. His presence changed the geometry of the room. Suddenly, Lorraine was surrounded. Margot to her left, Spencer to her right, Boyd blocking the only exit. "What's the problem here?" "This woman." Spencer pointed at Lorraine like she was evidence. "She doesn't belong here. She used the staff entrance without proper authorization, and now she's refusing to leave the file room." Boyd looked at Lorraine. His expression had hardened since the parking lot. No longer sleepy, but alert, hostile. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with me." "Am I being detained?" The question stopped him. It was a specific question, a legal question, the kind of question that ordinary people, the kind of people Boyd assumed Lorraine to be, didn't usually ask. "I'm asking you to cooperate, and I'm asking you a direct question. Am I being detained under suspicion of a specific crime?" Boyd's eyes flicked to Spencer, then to Margot, looking for guidance, looking for someone to tell him what to do. "You're in a restricted area without proper credentials. This is a records room that opens to staff at 6:30. It is now 6:55. I am staff. My credentials are in Ms. Bellamy's hand." "Your credentials are suspicious." "Suspicious how?" "The photo doesn't match. The photo is blurry because the printer malfunctioned. The name matches exactly. My driver's license, which you examined for 1 minute and 47 seconds in the parking lot, confirms my identity." Boyd's face reddened. He didn't like having his actions quoted back to him with precise timestamps. Most people didn't notice how long things took. Most people didn't count. Lorraine counted everything. "Ma'am, I'm asking you one more time. Come with me to the security office, or I'll have to escort you out. On what grounds? Trespassing. Florida Statute 810.09. Lorraine's voice was calm, almost conversational. Trespassing requires that a person be warned to leave the premises and refuse to do so. You haven't warned me to leave. I haven't refused. And more importantly, I'm authorized to be here, which means I can't trespass in my own workplace. Silence. Spencer stared at her. Margot's grip on the access card tightened. Boyd's hand moved from his radio to his belt, hovering over the handcuffs clipped there. How do you know that statute? Spencer's voice was sharp. It's public record. Most people don't memorize public records. Lorraine looked at him. Well, I'm not most people. We're just getting started. This confrontation is about to explode. Keep watching to see what happens when they find out who she really is. The standoff lasted for 93 seconds. 93 seconds of nobody moving, nobody speaking, the fluorescent lights humming overhead, the distant sound of an elevator arriving on another floor. Then Janine Pratt, who had been watching silently from behind her counter, reached for her desk phone. I'm calling the sheriff's office. On what charge? Lorraine's voice cut through the tension like a blade. Criminal trespass, harassment of court staff. I haven't harassed anyone. I've asked for a case file and defended myself against false accusations. You've been hostile and uncooperative. I've been assertive. There's a difference. Janine's hand hovered over the phone. She looked at Margot, waiting for permission, for instruction, for someone to tell her what to do. Margot nodded. Janine began to dial. Before you do that, Lorraine's voice remained steady. I want everyone in this room to understand something. You're about to file a false police report. That's a violation of Florida Statute 837.05. If I'm removed from this building, and it later emerges that I was authorized to be here, every person involved in my removal becomes liable for wrongful detention, false imprisonment, and civil rights violations under 42 U.S.C. Section 1983. She paused. Let that sink in. I'm not threatening you. I'm informing you. There's a difference. Janine's finger froze over the dial pad. Margot stepped forward. Who are you? Someone who knows the law. Someone who documents everything. Someone who has 17 pages of notes from the last 13 minutes. She held up her notebook. Would you like me to read them back to you? The door to the file room swung open. Terrence Yates stopped in the doorway, court reporter, stenograph bag over his shoulder, paper coffee cup in hand. He took in the scene with widening eyes. 3 people surrounding a single black woman, Boyd's hand near his cuffs, Janine frozen at the phone. Everything okay here? Staff matter. Spencer's voice was clipped. Nothing to concern yourself with. But Terrence didn't move. He looked at Lorraine, and she looked back at him. She didn't plead, didn't signal for help, just met his gaze with steady calm. Terrence noticed something. He wasn't sure what. Maybe the quality of her stillness, the way she held herself like someone accustomed to being watched, the way she wasn't afraid. People who didn't belong were afraid. People who had snuck into places, stolen access cards, were trying to get away with something. They showed it. In their eyes, their posture, their desperation to explain. This woman wasn't explaining anything. She was documenting. I'll be in courtroom 4. Terrence nodded at Lorraine, a small gesture, almost imperceptible. If anyone needs me. He left. But the balance in the room had shifted. There was a witness now, someone outside their circle who had seen what was happening. Boyd's hand dropped from his belt. Fine. Margot thrust the access card back at Lorraine. Stay here if you want. But if I see you anywhere near courtroom 4 before 9 o'clock, I'm filing a motion for contempt. On what grounds? Disrupting court proceedings. Proceedings don't begin until the judge takes the bench. Until then, the courtroom is a public space. Margot's eyes narrowed. You seem to know a lot about how courtrooms work. I do. Are you a paralegal? A law student? Does it matter? It matters if you're planning to interfere with my trial. Your trial. Lorraine smiled. Not warmly, but not coldly either. The smile of someone who had heard something funny that no one else understood. Is that what it is? Your trial? Aldridge and Bellamy represents the city of Ashford. We've been preparing this case for 18 months. I know, I've read the file. The words landed like stones in still water. Margot stiffened. Spencer stepped forward. How have you read the file? That's confidential case material. Case materials in civil litigation are part of the public record after the discovery deadline. The discovery deadline in Aldridge versus City of Ashford was November 15th. How do you know that? Lorraine slipped her notebook back into her bag, slung the bag over her shoulder, took a step toward the door. I suggest everyone use the next 90 minutes to prepare for trial. I know I will. She walked past Boyd, who didn't stop her. Past Spencer, who stood frozen with his mouth open. Past Margot, whose face had gone pale beneath her perfect makeup. She didn't look back. The stairwell was empty. Lorraine climbed the stairs slowly, counting each step. 24 steps per floor. 72 steps from the ground floor to the third floor. 144 heartbeats. Her hands were shaking. She gripped the railing, forced herself to breathe. In through the nose, out through the mouth, the way she'd learned in law school during her first trial, when a defense attorney had called her incompetent and she'd had to excuse herself to the bathroom to stop herself from crying. She didn't cry anymore. Hadn't in years. But the anger was still there, coiled tight in her chest, waiting for permission to explode. Not yet, not here. She reached the third floor. The judicial wing. Quiet carpeted hallways instead of marble. Mahogany doors with brass nameplates. Her door read, Honorable L. Whitmore, Circuit Court, Division 4. She pulled out her key. The fob was blue, marked with a small engraved scale of justice, given to her on her first day on the bench 12 years ago by a senior judge who had since retired. The door opened. She stepped inside, closed it behind her, and finally, alone, she let her shoulders drop. The chambers were exactly as she'd left them Friday evening. Desk organized with 3 stacks, active cases, pending motions, administrative matters. Bookshelves lined with Florida statutes, case law reporters, and a worn copy of Black's Law Dictionary that had been her grandmother's. On the wall, her law degree from Howard University, her certificate of admission to the Florida bar, her judicial commission signed by the governor. She sank into her chair, pulled out her notebook, began to write. Incident log, January 13th, 2025. She documented everything, every word Boyd had said, every second of the ID check, Spencer's accusations, Margot's condescension, Janine's refusal to search the system, the exact timestamp when Terrence Yates had walked in, 17 pages, 23 distinct incidents, 6 potential violations of professional conduct. When she finished, it was 7:23. She had 37 minutes before she needed to begin her morning routine. Time enough to secure the evidence. She turned to her computer, logged into the courthouse security system with her administrative credentials. The footage was crisp despite the early hour. Camera entrance east showed Boyd Kemper stopping Lorraine at 6:42 and 17 seconds. He examined her ID for 1 minute and 47 seconds before allowing her through. Camera entrance east, 19 seconds later, showed Spencer Aldridge walking through without being stopped. 0 seconds verification. She saved both clips, created a folder, incident_011325_ comparison. Camera hallway -2A showed her walking toward the file room at 6:47. Spencer appeared at 6:47 and 12 seconds, already on his phone, speaking rapidly. Camera file room B showed nothing. Lorraine frowned. The camera should have captured the interior of the file room, the confrontation with Janine, Margot's arrival, Boyd's hand hovering over his handcuffs. Instead, the footage showed static from 6:48 to 6:58, a perfect 10-minute gap. She checked the metadata. The footage hadn't been corrupted. It had been deleted. Deletion timestamp, 7:14. 7 minutes before she'd logged in. Someone had accessed the system and removed exactly the footage she needed. She reached for her phone, dialed IT. Raymond Voss speaking. Raymond, this is Judge Whitmore. I need you to do something for me. Of course, Your Honor. What do you need? Camera file room B shows a 10-minute gap this morning from 6:48 to 6:58. The footage was deleted at 7:14. I need to know who authorized that deletion and whether there's a backup. Silence on the line. Judge Whitmore, that would require accessing administrative logs. I'm aware. Can you do it? I'll need to escalate to IT security. They handle access records. Do it. And Raymond, I need this documented. Formal chain of custody. Whoever deleted that footage, I want their terminal ID, their login credentials, and their authorization level. Yes, Your Honor. She hung up, stared at the blank space where the file room footage should have been. Someone had known. Someone had anticipated that this morning's incident would be documented, and they had moved, quickly, efficiently, to erase the evidence. The question was, who? And the harder question, why? She picked up the phone again. This time she dialed a number she had hoped she would never need. Judicial Conduct Commission. JCC, Gloria Terrell speaking. Gloria, it's Lorraine Whitmore. Division 4, Ashford County. A pause. Judge Whitmore, it's early. What can I do for you? Lorraine told her everything. The parking lot, the file room, the threats, the deleted footage. Her voice stayed level, professional. The same voice she used on the bench when reading verdicts that would change people's lives. And you're certain you want to file this? Gloria's voice was careful. The process takes months, and the Bellamy firm has connections. I know about their connections. I'm talking about the Judicial Conference, the Bar Association, campaign contributions. I know, Gloria. Outcomes are rarely satisfying. Most complaints end in confidential counseling or dismissed findings. I know that too. Silence. All right. I'll open a preliminary inquiry, but I need everything documented. Timestamps, names, exact words. Lorraine looked at her notebook. 23 pages now, filled with precise handwriting. I have extensive documentation. How extensive? 23 pages, plus security footage, what wasn't deleted, plus a potential witness. Gloria made a sound that might have been surprise, might have been respect. I'll be in touch. And Judge Whitmore? Yes? Be careful. The people you're accusing, they're not going to take this lying down. I don't expect them to. She hung up. 8:12. A knock at the door. Judge Whitmore? It's Marcus. She stood, smoothed her sweater, opened the door. Marcus Odom, her bailiff for 5 years, solid and unflappable, stood in the hallway with concern etched across his broad face. I heard there was some trouble this morning. In the file room. Word travels fast. Terrence told me. Said he walked in on Boyd and some attorneys giving you a hard time. Marcus hesitated. Begging your pardon, ma'am. But did they know who you are? No. And you didn't tell them? No. Marcus processed this. 5 years of working together had taught him that Judge Whitmore did nothing without reason. If she had chosen not to identify herself, she had her reasons. It wasn't his place to question them. What do you need from me? I need you in courtroom 4 at 8:55. Exactly 8:55. The Aldridge trial. Yes. Isn't that... Marcus frowned. Isn't that the case involving the attorneys who... Yes, it is. Understanding dawned on his face. You're going to recuse yourself. I have to. Under 28 U.S.C. Section 455, a judge must disqualify herself in any proceeding where her impartiality might reasonably be questioned. After this morning, my impartiality would absolutely be questioned. So you're going to give them what they want. I'm going to follow the law. Lorraine met his eyes. But I'm also going to make sure that what happened this morning is documented, reported, and investigated. The recusal doesn't protect them from consequences. It just means someone else will preside over their case. Marcus nodded slowly. 8:55. 8:55. And Marcus? Yes, ma'am? When I enter that courtroom, I want to see their faces. 8:41. Lorraine pulled her judicial robe from the closet. The black fabric was heavy, heavier than most people expected. It settled on her shoulders like armor, transforming her silhouette from ordinary to authoritative. The zipper ran up the back, hidden beneath a fold of fabric. The collar was stiff, designed to frame the face. She looked at herself in the small mirror mounted inside the closet door. This morning, Spencer Aldridge had seen a black woman in a gray sweater and decided she didn't belong. Margot Bellamy had called her honey and directed her to the family waiting area. Boyd Kemper had treated her like a suspect. Janine Pratt had claimed she didn't exist. Now the mirror showed someone else entirely, a judge. 8:52. Lorraine descended the stairs. The courthouse was fully awake now. Lawyers rushing through hallways, defendants waiting nervously on benches, clerks carrying stacks of files. Several people recognized her as she passed. They stepped aside, nodded respectfully, murmured, "Good morning, Your Honor." She acknowledged each of them with a slight nod. Nothing more. The hallway to courtroom 4 was crowded. Witnesses, family members, journalists. The wrongful termination case had attracted media attention. Something about a city employee fired for reporting safety violations. The kind of case that could embarrass the municipal government. The kind of case that Aldridge and Bellamy specialized in making disappear. She walked past them all without stopping. Past Boyd Kemper, stationed outside the courtroom doors, whose face went from bored to horrified as he recognized her. "Judge, I didn't..." She didn't stop. "Your Honor, I had no idea." She pushed through the doors. Courtroom 4 was packed. Plaintiff's counsel sat at the table to the left. a gray-haired man with horn-rimmed glasses, shuffling papers nervously. His client, a middle-aged black woman in a modest blue dress, sat beside him with hands folded in her lap. Defense counsel sat on the right, Spencer Aldridge in his navy suit, flipping through a stack of notes. Margot Bellamy beside him, radiating confidence, checking her phone with the casual arrogance of someone who already knew how this would end. They didn't look up when the doors opened. They were looking at their notes, their phones, their strategy documents, prepared to win. Convinced they would win, certain that nothing could go wrong, Marcus Odom stepped through the side door, took his position, and raised his voice. "All rise!" The courtroom stood. Chairs scraped, papers rustled. Someone coughed. The Circuit Court of the 4th Judicial Circuit, in and for Ashford County, Florida, is now in session. Marcus's voice was steady, formal, carrying to every corner of the room. The Honorable Lorraine Whitmore presiding. Spencer's head snapped up. Margot's phone slipped from her fingers. Lorraine walked past the bar, climbed the 3 steps to the bench, and sat down in the chair that was hers. "Please be seated." For 3 full seconds, nobody moved. Spencer stared at her like he was seeing a ghost. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. No sound emerged. Margot recovered first. Her face went through a rapid series of expressions: shock, horror, calculation, forced composure, before settling into a strained smile. "Your Honor, Miss Bellamy." Lorraine's voice was measured, controlled. "Please wait until you are recognized to speak." The courtroom was silent. The journalists in the gallery were writing furiously. The plaintiff's attorney was staring at the defense table with an expression of dawning comprehension. Lorraine opened the case file, reviewed the first page, though she knew every word by heart. "Before we proceed with today's matter, I must address a procedural issue." She looked at Spencer Aldridge. He was gripping the edge of the table with white knuckles. "This morning, prior to court hours, I had an interaction with counsel for the defense, Ms. Bellamy and Mr. Aldridge, as well as courthouse security and clerical staff. The nature of that interaction requires me to evaluate my continued participation in this matter under 28 U.S.C. Section 455 and Canon 3E of the Florida Code of Judicial Conduct." She paused. Let the words settle. Section 455 subsection A states, "Any justice, judge, or magistrate judge of the United States shall disqualify himself in any proceeding in which his impartiality might reasonably be questioned." Another pause. "Given the events of this morning, my impartiality in this specific matter may reasonably be questioned. Accordingly, I am recusing myself from case number 2024 CV 01187, Aldridge and Bellamy versus City of Ashford. The case will be reassigned to Judge Thornton." Spencer exhaled. Relief flickered across his face. Lorraine watched him relax, watched Margot's shoulders drop. They thought it was over. They thought they had won. However, the word fell like a guillotine. "My recusal from this civil matter does not preclude, and in fact necessitates, a separate inquiry into the conduct I observed this morning." Spencer's face went pale. "Pursuant to Canon 2B of the Code of Judicial Conduct and Florida Rules of Professional Conduct 4-8.4, I have a duty to report conduct prejudicial to the administration of justice." She picked up a piece of paper from her desk. "Read aloud. Rule 4-8.4 subsection D. A lawyer shall not engage in conduct in connection with the practice of law that is prejudicial to the administration of justice, including to knowingly, or through callous indifference, disparage, humiliate, or discriminate against litigants, jurors, witnesses, court personnel, or other lawyers on any basis." She set the paper down, looked directly at Spencer. "Mr. Aldridge, this morning you threatened to file contempt charges against me. You cited disruption of proceedings when no proceedings had commenced, and witness intimidation when no witnesses were present. You also instructed a security officer to physically remove me from this courthouse." "Your Honor, I didn't know." "That's not a defense." Her voice hardened. "Florida law does not require that you know someone's identity before treating them with basic professional courtesy. You saw a black woman without visible credentials and assumed she was a criminal. That assumption, and the actions that followed from it, are exactly what Rule 4-8.4 is designed to address." She turned to Margot. "Miss Bellamy." Margot straightened in her chair. Her composure had returned, but there were cracks, a slight tremor in her hands, a tightness around her eyes. "You directed me to the family member's waiting area. You stated that you could spot someone who doesn't belong from a mile away. You referred to me as honey, a diminutive I have never invited or tolerated from anyone in a professional setting. Your Honor, I was simply trying to—" "You were trying to put me in my place." Lorraine's voice cut through the excuse. "You saw what you expected to see, a black woman who couldn't possibly be authorized to be in the same spaces as you, and you acted on that assumption without asking a single clarifying question." She let that hang in the air. "I have filed a formal complaint with the Florida Bar regarding both your conduct and Mr. Aldridge's. The complaint includes timestamps, exact quotes, and witness statements. I have also initiated a preliminary inquiry with the Judicial Conduct Commission regarding courthouse security and clerical staff involved in this morning's incidents. For the record," Lorraine's voice carried to every corner of the silent courtroom, "I have preserved security footage from 6 cameras between the hours of 5 a.m. and 9 a.m. this morning. The footage was downloaded from the courthouse server at 7:31 a.m. by IT specialist Raymond Voss and authenticated with his digital signature. Chain of custody documentation is attached to my formal complaint." She paused. "I have a written statement from Terrence Yates, court reporter, who witnessed a portion of the incident at approximately 7:08 a.m. His statement describes seeing multiple individuals surrounding me in the file room corridor." Another pause. "And I have 23 pages of contemporaneous handwritten notes, including timestamps, exact quotes, and names of all individuals involved. These notes were taken during and immediately after each interaction. Spencer looked like he was going to be sick. Margot looked like she was calculating legal strategies, damage control, settlement options, ways to make this go away quietly. Neither of them was going to find easy answers. I want to be clear about what happens next." Lorraine surveyed the courtroom, the stunned attorneys, the fascinated journalists, the plaintiff who was watching with tears streaming down her face. "The Florida Bar complaint process typically takes 3 to 6 months. Possible outcomes include private reprimand, public censure, suspension, or disbarment, though most complaints result in dismissal or minor sanctions. I am under no illusion that filing a complaint guarantees meaningful consequences. The Judicial Conduct Commission inquiry may take 6 to 12 months. Most inquiries end in confidential counseling or dismissed findings. Terminations are rare. Meaningful reform is even rarer. In this case, Aldridge versus City of Ashford will proceed under Judge Thornton. My recusal does not affect the merits of either party's claims. Justice, if there is any to be had, will be determined through normal procedural channels." She stood. "But I want everyone in this room to understand something. What happened this morning happens every day." Her voice filled the courtroom, steady and clear. "In this courthouse, in courthouses across this country, to lawyers, to judges, to defendants, to witnesses, to anyone who doesn't look like they belong." She let that sink in. "The difference is documentation. The difference is not letting it slide. The difference is making a record so that when patterns emerge, they can be addressed. Not just one incident, not just one bad morning, but a system that allows these things to happen." She gathered her notes, straightened the file. "I'm not seeking revenge. I'm seeking accountability. And accountability is slow, frustrating, and often incomplete, but it is better than silence." She looked at Spencer Aldridge, looked at Margot Bellamy, looked at Boyd Kemper, who had slipped into the back of the courtroom and was watching with undisguised terror. "This court is adjourned. Bailiff, please escort counsel to their vehicles. We wouldn't want any misunderstandings in the parking lot." Marcus stepped forward. "All rise." The courtroom stood as Judge Lorraine Whitmore descended from the bench and walked out the side door. Behind her, pandemonium erupted. Don't miss Part 2, where the real investigation begins and secrets start to surface. Subscribe now. 3 weeks later, Lorraine sat in her chambers, reviewing the weekly administrative update from the Judicial Conduct Commission. Preliminary findings, inquiry number 2025-JC-0041. Status: under review. Officer Boyd Kemper. Suspended without pay for 30 days pending completion of implicit bias training. Department to review security screening protocols. Deputy Clerk Janine Pratt. Reassigned to record storage facility pending outcome of administrative review. Attorneys Margot Bellamy and Spencer Aldridge. Bar complaint forwarded to Grievance Committee for investigation. Timeline: 3 to 6 months for initial determination. She read the words twice, 3 times. Suspended, reassigned, forwarded for investigation, not fired, not disbarred, not held accountable in any way that would actually change behavior. She had known it would be like this. She had told the courtroom it would be like this. But knowing and experiencing were different things. A knock at the door. "May I?" Judge Wallace Thornton, senior judge, 25 years on the bench, entered without waiting for an answer. He looked older than 3 weeks ago. Or maybe she was just noticing it now. The Aldridge case settled. I heard. 75,000. No admission of wrongdoing. Confidentiality agreement. Standard. Margot's firm is quietly dropping their municipal contracts. Word is they're refocusing on private clients. Lorraine nodded. She had expected as much. It wasn't justice, not really. But it was consequence. And sometimes consequence was all you got. Lorraine, I owe you an apology. She looked up. For what? For asking if you were sure you wanted to make this a thing. For suggesting the Aldridge's connections mattered more than what happened to you. Lorraine was quiet for a moment. Wallace, you've been on the bench for 25 years. How many times have you seen something like this and said nothing? Too many? Then don't apologize to me. Change what you do next time. Terrence Yates stopped by later that afternoon. The settlement conference in the Rodriguez matter. He held up a transcript. Thought you might want it for the file. Thank you, Terrence. He hesitated at the door. Judge Whitmore, can I say something? Of course. That morning in the file room, I knew something was wrong. I should have stayed. I should have said something. You were a witness. That was enough. Was it? His voice was heavy with doubt. Boyd's back in 2 weeks. Janine just moved buildings. The Aldridges settled and walked away. That's how it usually works. Doesn't that make you angry? Every day. She met his eyes. But anger without documentation is just shouting into the wind. Documentation creates a record. Records create patterns. Patterns create cases. Cases, sometimes, create change. She meant it. She had to believe it. Otherwise, what was any of this for? That evening, an email arrived from Raymond Voss. Subject: Camera 6 Anomaly. Follow-up. Judge Whitmore. Per your request, I reviewed all preserved footage from January 13th. Cameras 1 to 5 show complete recordings. However, Camera 6, File Room B, Interior, shows a gap from 6:48 to 6:58. Approximately 10 minutes of footage is missing. This gap does not appear in the external backup. The deletion timestamp indicates manual removal at 7:14 a.m., before your preservation request was logged. I've escalated to IT security for forensic analysis. We'll update when available. R. Voss Lorraine read the email twice. Someone had deleted the footage. 10 minutes, the exact window when Janine had denied her access, when Margot had called her honey, when the entire incident had escalated.
And they had done it at 7:14, before she had requested preservation, before she had even reached her chambers. Someone had known what was coming. She scrolled down. Raymond had attached the deletion log. Deletion authorized by redacted. Terminal, admin 3 terminal, text, 07 redacted the authorization. She picked up her phone, dialed Gloria Terrell. Judicial conduct, Gloria speaking. Gloria, I need to add something to the inquiry. Evidence tampering, possible obstruction. What happened? 10 minutes of security footage was deleted before I could preserve it, and the deletion authorization has been redacted. Silence on the line.
Lorraine, that means someone with administrative access. I know what it means. Someone higher up. I know. She hung up, sat in the silence of her chambers. Outside, the sun was setting. Orange light streamed through the blinds, casting long shadows across her desk. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered. Judge Whitmore. Who is this? Someone who thinks you should let this go. The voice was calm, professional, like someone reading from a script. You've made your point. Boyd's been suspended. Janine's been moved. The bar's reviewing the Aldridges. Everyone's learned their lesson. Why keep digging? Who is this? Does it matter? Lorraine grabbed her pen, notepad, started writing. Unknown call. January 13th, timestamp. Voice, male, educated, no regional accent. Background, quiet, possibly office. I don't respond to anonymous threats. This isn't a threat, Judge. It's advice. The system you're poking at, it protects itself. Always has. Always will. You win this battle, you lose the war. What war? The one you don't even know you're fighting. Click. The line went dead. Lorraine set the phone down. She stared at her notes. 23 pages from that morning, another 4 from the past 3 weeks. Emails, deletion logs, chain of custody documentation, and now this, An anonymous caller telling her to stop. Someone was scared. Good. She opened a new document on her computer, typed slowly, carefully. Personal note. January 13th incident. The morning's events may not have been random. Consider 1. Why was Boyd Kemper specifically stationed at the staff entrance at 6:42 a.m., not his usual post? 2. Why did Janine Pratt immediately claim I wasn't in the system without performing a proper search? 3. Who deleted camera 6 footage at 7:14 before I requested preservation? 4. Who authorized the redaction of the deletion log? 5. Who has administrative access to courthouse security systems? Hypothesis. This may have been coordinated. By whom? For what purpose? To do, request, FOIA, on all administrative access logs, request full employment records for Boyd Kemper and Janine Pratt review. Any connection between courthouse administration and Aldridge, and Bellamy review connections between courthouse IT and municipal contracts. This may not be about me at all. It may be about the case. She saved the document, encrypted it, emailed a copy to Gloria Terrell and to herself. Then she picked up the case file for tomorrow's docket. A routine contract dispute. No drama, no politics, no one trying to make her disappear. But as she read the first page, she couldn't shake the feeling. Someone had known she was coming that morning. Someone had tried to stop her before she even reached the bench. And whoever they were still out there. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. One word. Careful. She stared at the screen for a long moment. Then she took a screenshot, noted the timestamp, added it to the file, and kept reading. 6 weeks after the incident, the first document arrived.
It came in a plain manila envelope, no return address, postmark from Jacksonville. Lorraine found it in her courthouse mailbox, between a jury summons and a catalog for legal supplies she had never ordered. Inside, 17 pages of internal emails from Ashford County IT Department. The first email was dated January 12th, the day before the incident. From J. Pratt to B. Kemper. Subject: tomorrow morning. She usually arrives around 6:45, staff entrance. Make sure you're at the east gate, not the north. Lorraine read it 3 times. She usually arrives. Someone had been watching her. Someone had been tracking her patterns. And someone had positioned Boyd Kemper specifically to intercept her. The second email was worse. From to J. Pratt CC. Subject: read tomorrow morning. Confirmed. Make sure to delay her long enough for the footage gap. IT will handle the rest. Footage gap. They had planned it, all of it. The confrontation wasn't random, it was orchestrated. She spread the documents across her desk, 17 pages, dozens of emails. A timeline of conspiracy stretching back 3 weeks before the incident. December 23rd, someone requested Lorraine's schedule from the administrative office. December 28th, someone accessed her personnel file. January 3rd, someone ran a search on her vehicle registration. January 8th, someone requested the security camera rotation schedule. January 12th, the coordination emails between Janine and Boyd. January 13th, the incident. She photographed every page, saved the images to 3 separate drives, emailed copies to Gloria Terrell with a single line. Someone sent this anonymously. Verify authenticity. Then she sat back in her chair and tried to understand what she was looking at. The conspiracy was obvious now. But the motive wasn't. Why target her? She had been assigned to the Aldridge case through random rotation. There was no way to predict which judge would preside, unless someone had manipulated the assignment. She pulled up the case assignment log. Aldridge and Bellamy versus City of Ashford had originally been assigned to Judge Morrison in Division 2. On December 15th, Judge Morrison had recused himself, citing a conflict of interest related to his wife's employment at City Hall. The case had been reassigned to her. December 15th was 8 days before someone requested her schedule. If you're still here, you need to see what happens next. Subscribe and hit the notification bell. This story is about to take a dark turn. Judge Harold Morrison's office was on the 4th floor, corner suite, with a view of the parking lot that Lorraine had always found depressing. She knocked at 2:15. Come in. Morrison was 62,
silver-haired, with the permanent squint of someone who had spent too many years reading fine print. He looked up from his desk with an expression of mild surprise. "Lorraine, what brings you up here?" "I have a question about the Aldridge case." His face changed. Subtle, but unmistakable. A tightening around the eyes, a slight shift in posture. "The case I recused from?" "Yes." "What about it?" She stepped inside, closed the door behind her. "Your recusal was based on a conflict of interest. Your wife's employment at City Hall." "That's correct. Your wife has worked at City Hall for 18 years, in the Parks Department. She has no connection to the employment practices being litigated in the Aldridge case." Morrison's jaw tightened. "I felt it was appropriate to err on the side of caution." "Did someone ask you to recuse?" "I beg your pardon?" "It's a simple question, Harold. Did someone suggest that you should step away from the Aldridge case?" Silence stretched between them. Morrison's fingers drummed on his desk, once, twice, 3 times. "I don't appreciate the implication." "I'm not implying anything. I'm asking directly. And I'm telling you that my recusal was voluntary and appropriate." He stood. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a motion hearing in 20 minutes. He walked past her toward the door. As he reached for the handle, Lorraine spoke again. "Someone orchestrated the incident in the file room. They knew my schedule. They positioned staff to intercept me. They deleted security footage before I could preserve it." Morrison's hand froze on the door handle. "If your recusal was part of that plan, if someone needed me on that case for a specific reason, I will find out." He turned. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Fear, perhaps, or guilt. "Be careful, Lorraine. You're asking questions that have answers you might not want to hear. That's the second time someone has told me to be careful. Maybe you should listen." He opened the door and walked out. The connection to Aldridge and Bellamy became clearer with each document she examined. The wrongful termination case wasn't just about one employee. Marcus Webb, the plaintiff, had been a building inspector for 18 years. He had reported safety violations at 3 construction sites, all 3 owned by shell companies that, after hours of research, Lorraine traced back to a single investment group, Ashford Development Partners. She searched the name, found incorporation documents filed with the Florida Secretary of State, listed principals, Thomas Aldridge, Margot Bellamy, and, her breath caught, Wallace Thornton. Judge Wallace Thornton. The senior judge who had questioned whether she wanted to make this a thing. The judge who had taken over the Aldridge case after her recusal. The judge who was, apparently, a business partner with the defendants. She needed more information, the kind that wasn't available through public records. At 4:30, she left the courthouse through the back entrance, drove to a coffee shop on the south side of town, far enough from the legal district that she wouldn't run into colleagues. The man waiting for her was already seated in a corner booth. Derek Okonkwo had been an investigative journalist for 22 years. He had covered corruption cases, police brutality, political scandals. His byline appeared in the Ashford Gazette, but his real work happened in the spaces between published stories, the leads he followed, the sources he cultivated, the patterns he noticed. "Judge Whitmore," he stood as she approached. "I was surprised to get your call. I need information off the record." "Everything's off the record until I decide otherwise." He smiled slightly. "That's how journalism works." She sat across from him, slid a folder across the table. "Ashford Development Partners. What do you know about them?" Derek opened the folder, scanned the documents inside. His expression didn't change, but his eyes sharpened. "Where did you get these?" "Anonymous source." "The same anonymous source who sent you the IT emails?" She didn't answer. She didn't need to. "Ashford Development Partners." Derek closed the folder. "I've been investigating them for 8 months. Shell companies, suspicious permits, building inspectors who suddenly retire or get transferred, and a construction project on the east side that's had 17 safety violations in 2 years, none of which have resulted in work stoppages." 17 violations? 17 documented. Probably more that never got reported. The lead inspector was a man named Marcus Webb, the plaintiff in the wrongful termination case. "The same." Derek leaned forward. "Webb reported the violations, filed formal complaints, pushed for work stoppages. And then, mysteriously, he was terminated for performance issues that had never appeared in any prior evaluation. And he sued. And the case was assigned to Judge Morrison, who recused himself 3 days after receiving a visit from Margot Bellamy." Lorraine's stomach tightened. "You know about the visit?" "I know about a lot of things." Derek pulled out his phone, scrolled through photos. Morrison's wife received a job offer 2 weeks after the recusal. Director of Community Partnerships at the Ashford Parks Foundation. Salary, $180,000. Previous salary, $62,000. That's bribery, yes. Derek set down the phone. But proving it requires cooperation from Morrison. And Morrison isn't cooperating. Why are you telling me this? Derek studied her face. Because you're asking questions. Because someone tried to stop you from reaching your bench on January 13th. And because the people behind Ashford Development Partners are about to get away with murder. Murder? Figure of speech, mostly. He pulled out another folder, thicker than the first. 3 workers have died on Ashford Development sites in the past 18 months. 2 were classified as accidents. 1 is still under investigation. He opened the folder. Inside, autopsy reports, accident scene photos, OSHA citations. Carlos Mendez, 23 years old, fell from scaffolding that hadn't been properly secured. The scaffold was missing 4 bolts. Bolts that Marcus Webb had documented as missing in his inspection report 3 weeks earlier. Lorraine looked at the photo. A young man with dark hair, smiling, standing next to a woman who might have been his mother. The report was never filed. Someone intercepted it, and 2 weeks later, Carlos Mendez was dead. She didn't sleep that night. The documents spread across her kitchen table. Emails, corporate filings, OSHA reports, autopsy findings. A conspiracy that stretched from the courthouse to City Hall to construction sites where workers died because safety violations were ignored. And at the center of it all, Aldridge and Bellamy, the firm that had tried to have her removed from her own courthouse. The firm whose partners were business associates of the senior judge. The firm that had every reason to want the Webb case to disappear quietly. Her phone buzzed at 2:14 a.m. unknown number. She answered. Judge Whitmore. The same calm voice as before. I warned you to let this go. And I told you I don't respond to anonymous threats. This isn't a threat. It's a final courtesy. The documents you received, they're not going to help you. They're going to bury you. How? Because you received stolen property. Confidential emails obtained through unauthorized access to government systems. The moment you use them, you become the story. Not the corruption, not the conspiracy, you. Lorraine's grip tightened on the phone. Who are you? Someone who's watched this play out before. Someone who knows how it ends. A pause. You can't win this fight, Judge. The system protects itself. It always has. It always will. Then why call me? Why warn me? Silence. Because you remind me of someone I used to know. Someone who thought she could change things from the inside. The voice softened slightly. She couldn't, and it cost her everything. Click. The line went dead. 3 days later, Lorraine filed a motion with the Judicial Qualifications Commission. Not a complaint. A motion for recusal review, requesting an examination of Judge Wallace Thornton's participation in the Aldridge case given his financial relationship with the defendants. The motion cited public records, incorporation documents, property transfers, investment disclosures. Nothing that could be traced to anonymous sources. Nothing that could be called stolen. Within 24 hours, Wallace Thornton appeared at her door. He didn't knock. Just walked in, face flushed, a vein pulsing in his temple. What the hell do you think you're doing? Lorraine didn't stand. Following judicial ethics requirements. The same requirements you cited when you questioned my decision to file complaints. You're accusing me of corruption. I'm requesting a recusal review. If there's no conflict of interest, the review will confirm that. She met his eyes. Unless you're worried about what the review might find. Thornton stepped closer, close enough that she could smell the bourbon on his breath. 11:15 in the morning. You have no idea what you're messing with. Then explain it to me. Ashford Development Partners is an investment group. I own a minority stake. It has nothing to do with my judicial duties. Your investment partners are the defendants in a case you're presiding over. That's a textbook conflict of interest under Canon 3E. The case settled. There's nothing to preside over. The case settled after you took over. After I recused myself. After someone orchestrated an incident designed to remove me from the bench. Lorraine stood now, matching his aggressive posture. Tell me, Wallace, did you know what was going to happen that morning? His face went pale, then red, then pale again. You're paranoid. I have documents. What documents? Internal emails coordinating my interception at the staff entrance. Footage deletion authorization. A timeline of surveillance stretching back 3 weeks. She paused. Would you like to see them? Thornton's hands clenched into fists. For a moment, just a moment, she thought he might actually hit her. You're finished, Lorraine. One way or another, you're finished. Is that a threat? It's a prediction. He turned toward the door. And when it comes true, remember that I gave you a chance to walk away. He slammed the door behind him. The next morning, her car wouldn't start. Lorraine turned the key 3 times. Nothing. Not even the click of the starter motor. She popped the hood, looked inside. She wasn't a mechanic, but she knew enough to recognize that something was wrong. The battery cables had been cut. Clean cuts, not frayed. Someone had used wire cutters. She stood in the parking lot of her apartment complex, staring at the severed cables, feeling the weight of what this meant. They were escalating. This is getting dangerous. Stay with me. What happens next will shock you. She called for a rideshare, arrived at the courthouse at 7:45, later than usual, which made her nervous. Patterns could be exploited. She had learned that the hard way. Boyd Kemper was back at the security desk. His 30-day suspension had ended 3 days ago. When he saw her approaching, he stood straighter, eyes fixed on a point somewhere above her head. "Good morning, Your Honor." She stopped, looked at him. "Boyd? Ma'am? My car was vandalized last night, battery cables cut." His expression didn't change. "I'm sorry to hear that." "Are you?" Now he met her eyes. Something flickered there, fear maybe, or warning. "I'm very sorry to hear that, Your Honor. These things, they happen sometimes. Random crime. Unpredictable. Nothing about this has been random." She walked past him, through the metal detector, up the stairs. She could feel his eyes on her back the entire way. At 9:15, Gloria Terrell called. "The emails you sent me. They're authentic." Lorraine closed her office door. "You verified them?" IT Forensics confirmed the metadata. They were extracted from the courthouse server sometime on January 27th, 2 weeks after the incident. Gloria paused. "But there's a problem." "What problem?" "The extraction was unauthorized. Whoever sent you those documents committed a felony, computer trespass under Florida Statute 815.06. I didn't extract them. I received them anonymously." "I know. But if you use them as evidence, the defense will argue they're fruit of the poisonous tree, inadmissible, and you'll face questions about how you obtained them." Lorraine felt the walls closing in. The anonymous caller had been right. The documents were a trap. "What can I do?" "Find another way to prove what you already know. Something that doesn't rely on stolen emails." Gloria's voice softened. "I believe you, Lorraine. I believe there's a conspiracy here. But belief isn't evidence. And without admissible evidence, this investigation goes nowhere." The next 3 weeks were a masterclass in obstruction. Every FOIA request Lorraine filed was delayed, denied, or returned incomplete. Personnel records for Boyd Kemper, exempt from disclosure under personnel privacy provisions. IT access logs, currently under audit, unavailable for external review. Security camera maintenance schedules, no responsive documents located. She requested a meeting with the county administrator. The meeting was scheduled, then canceled, then rescheduled, then canceled again. She contacted the state attorney general's office, left 3 messages. None were returned. She reached out to the FBI field office in Jacksonville. Civil rights violations, she argued, fell under federal jurisdiction. A polite agent took her statement and said someone would be in touch. No one was in touch. The Aldridge case, meanwhile, had evaporated. Marcus Webb, the building inspector who had reported safety violations, whose termination had sparked the lawsuit, had accepted a settlement. $75,000, a confidentiality agreement that prevented him from discussing the case or the conditions of his employment. When Lorraine tracked down his phone number and called, a woman answered. "He's not here." "Can you tell me when he'll be back?" "He's not coming back. We're leaving Ashford, tonight." "Can I ask why?" Silence. Then quietly, "Because someone made it very clear that staying would be dangerous." The line went dead. She found Derek Okonkwo at the same coffee shop, same corner booth. "Webb is gone, left the state." "I heard." Derek looked older than he had 3 weeks ago. Tired. "His lawyer called me yesterday, said Webb had received threats, phone calls, someone following his wife, a dead cat on their doorstep." "Jesus." "Standard intimidation playbook. It works because most people have something to lose." He stirred his coffee slowly. "The question is, what are you willing to lose?" Lorraine didn't answer immediately. She thought about her career, 26 years of service, her reputation, built case by case, judgment by judgment, her safety, increasingly uncertain. "I'm not willing to let them win." That's not the same as answering the question. It's the only answer I have. Derek slid a thumb drive across the table. This is everything I've gathered on Ashford Development Partners. Corporate filings, property records, campaign contributions, permits that were approved despite obvious problems. None of it is stolen. All of it is public record, just buried under layers of bureaucracy. Lorraine picked up the drive. Why give this to me? Because I can't use it. Derek's voice was bitter. My editor killed the story. Said it was too speculative, too many unnamed sources, too much risk of defamation suits. They got to the Gazette. They got to the ownership group. 3 weeks ago, Ashford Development Partners purchased a 40% stake in Regional Media Holdings, the company that owns the Gazette. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. They didn't even try to hide it. Just bought the silence. Lorraine stared at the thumb drive. A year of investigative work, reduced to a piece of plastic the size of her thumb. What am I supposed to do with this? Find someone who can use it. Someone they can't buy or intimidate. Derek stood. And be careful, Judge. They're not going to let you keep digging forever. Or that night, she didn't go home. She drove to a motel 30 miles outside Ashford, paid cash, used a fake name, something she had learned from a defendant years ago, a woman fleeing an abusive husband. In the motel room, she reviewed Derek's files. The pattern was clear once you knew what to look for. Ashford Development Partners had been systematically capturing the institutions that might hold them accountable. City council members who approved their permits received campaign contributions. Building inspectors who overlooked violations received promotions or reassignments. Judges who presided over related cases received what? She thought about Morrison's wife. The sudden job offer. The tripled salary. She thought about Thornton, his minority stake in the investment group, his insistence that she let things go. She thought about herself. The orchestrated confrontation, the deleted footage, the severed battery cables. They couldn't buy her, so they were trying to break her. At 3 a.m., her burner phone rang. She had purchased it that afternoon. Cash, no ID required. Given the number to exactly one person. Judge Whitmore. Gloria Terrell's voice was hushed, urgent. I shouldn't be calling you. What happened? The Judicial Qualifications Commission received your motion for recusal review. They're not going to act on it. Why not? Because Judge Thornton filed a counter motion this afternoon. He's accusing you of judicial misconduct, abuse of process, making false allegations, conduct unbecoming. Lorraine's blood went cold. He's claiming that your complaints against Aldridge and Bellamy were retaliatory, that you fabricated the incident in the file room to embarrass attorneys who were about to defeat you in court. That's insane. I have witnesses. I have documentation. And he has Wallace Thornton's word against yours, a 25-year judicial veteran with connections throughout the state bar. Gloria's voice cracked. Lorraine, they're going to suspend you pending investigation. The order comes down tomorrow morning. She sat in the darkness of the motel room, phone pressed to her ear, feeling the ground shift beneath her. How long is the suspension? Indefinite, until the investigation concludes. Which could be months, years, or never, if they decide to let it drag out. Gloria paused. I'm sorry. I tried to warn you. I know. What are you going to do? Lorraine thought about the thumb drive on the nightstand. The year of investigative work. The pattern of corruption that stretched across Ashford like a spider's web. I'm going to finish what I started. The suspension order arrived at 8 a.m. Lorraine wasn't there to receive it. She was sitting in the waiting room of the FBI field office in Jacksonville, watching agents in dark suits walk past, waiting for someone, anyone, to take her seriously. At 9:30, an agent named Patricia Caldwell finally appeared. Judge Whitmore? I'm Agent Caldwell. I understand you have information about a corruption case. I have more than information. I have evidence. She followed Caldwell to a small conference room, placed the thumb drive on the table, placed her own documentation beside it, the timeline, the emails, the witness statements, everything she had gathered over the past 6 weeks. This is a pattern of corruption involving Ashford County officials, a major law firm, and a development company with ties to multiple suspicious deaths. They've bought judges, intimidated witnesses, destroyed evidence, and when none of that worked, they filed false misconduct charges against me to remove me from the bench. Caldwell listened without interrupting, made notes on a legal pad, asked occasional clarifying questions. When Lorraine finished, Caldwell sat back in her chair. Judge Whitmore, I believe you. Relief flooded through her. Then you'll investigate? We've been investigating for 11 months. The FBI's case, codenamed Operation Crossbeam, had started with the construction deaths. OSHA referrals had flagged the pattern. 3 workers dead on sites owned by connected companies, all with documented safety violations that had been ignored. The Bureau had traced the money, followed the influence, mapped the network of corruption. "We know about Ashford Development Partners," Caldwell said. "We know about the judges, the inspectors, the city officials. What we don't have is someone on the inside, someone who can testify about the obstruction of justice." "I can testify." "You can testify about what happened to you, but you're suspended. Your credibility is compromised. They'll say you're a disgruntled judge with a vendetta." "Then who can testify?" Caldwell slid a photograph across the table. A woman in her 50s, graying hair pulled back, tired eyes. "Janine Pratt, the clerk who claimed you weren't in the system." Lorraine stared at the photo. The woman who had looked her in the eye and lied. "Why her?" "Because she's been cooperating with us for 3 weeks. Since she was reassigned to record storage, essentially a demotion, she's been very motivated to share what she knows." The safe house was a nondescript apartment in a residential neighborhood east of Jacksonville. Agent Caldwell drove. Lorraine sat in the passenger seat, watching the strip malls and fast food restaurants give way to quiet streets lined with modest homes. "Pratt was recruited by Margot Bellamy 6 years ago," Caldwell explained. "Bellamy needed someone inside the courthouse who could manipulate case assignments, delay filings, lose paperwork. Pratt needed money. She was in debt. Her husband had medical bills. It started small. Moved files to the bottom of the stack. Accidentally lose a document. Nothing overtly criminal. And it escalated. Always does. By the time January 13th rolled around, Pratt was in too deep to say no. They told her to deny your system access. Told her it was just a prank, a way to embarrass someone who was getting too big for her britches. She didn't know I was a judge? She claims she didn't. Maybe that's true. Maybe she's lying to minimize her role." Caldwell pulled into a parking space. "Either way, she's willing to testify, and her testimony corroborates everything you've documented." Janine Pratt looked different than she had in the file room. Smaller, older. The red nails were gone, replaced by bitten cuticles. The dismissive arrogance had evaporated, leaving behind something that might have been shame. She sat at a folding table in the safe house living room, hands wrapped around a cup of cold coffee, avoiding Lorraine's eyes. "I didn't know who you were." "Would it have mattered?" Janine flinched. "I don't know. Maybe. Probably not." She finally looked up. "They told me you were someone who needed to be delayed. Someone who was going to cause problems for important people. And you didn't ask questions?" "I stopped asking questions years ago." Her voice was hollow. "Questions get you noticed. And getting noticed in that system, it's not safe." Lorraine sat down across from her. The woman who had humiliated her. The woman who had looked at her and seen someone who didn't belong. "Tell me everything." Janine talked for 4 hours. She described the network, how Margot Bellamy served as the conduit between Ashford Development Partners and the courthouse officials who enabled their schemes, how Boyd Kemper was paid $500 for every interception, targeting specific individuals for extra security screening, creating delays, providing pretext for complaints, how Judge Morrison had been approached with the job offer for his wife, and how he had accepted within 24 hours. And Thornton? Thornton's different. He's not just taking bribes, he's a true believer. He thinks Ashford Development is good for the county. Jobs, growth, progress. He doesn't see the corruption, or he doesn't want to see it. "What about the footage deletion?" Janine's face went pale. "That wasn't supposed to happen." "But it did happen." "The order came from above. Way above. Someone I've never met, never talked to, just an instruction passed through channels." She shook her head. "I don't know who. I don't think anyone does. There's someone at the top of this thing, someone who stays invisible. We just call them the partner." The partner. Lorraine filed that away. Another thread to pull. Stay with me. The real mastermind is about to be exposed. Subscribe now so you don't miss the conclusion. The FBI moved faster than Lorraine had expected. 3 days after her meeting with Caldwell, federal agents executed simultaneous search warrants at Aldridge and Bellamy's offices, Ashford Development Partners headquarters, and the homes of 6 county officials, including Boyd Kemper. Lorraine watched the news coverage from the safe house. Margot Bellamy being led out in handcuffs, her Chanel suit wrinkled, her silver hair disheveled, Spencer Aldridge protesting his innocence to reporters who had already made up their minds. Boyd Kemper, stone-faced, saying nothing. "It's not over," Caldwell warned. "These are the foot soldiers. The partner, whoever's really running this, is still out there." "What about Thornton?" We don't have enough to arrest him. Not yet. His connection to Ashford Development is public record. He can claim he didn't know about the illegal activities, without testimony directly linking him to specific crimes. Janine can testify. Janine can testify about what she observed. She never met Thornton directly. All her instructions came through Bellamy. Caldwell sighed. We need someone higher up the chain. Someone who actually talked to Thornton, actually received instructions from him. That night, Lorraine's phone rang. Not the burner phone. Her real phone, the one she had turned off weeks ago and shoved in a drawer. She looked at the screen. The number was familiar. She had seen it hundreds of times over the years, on court documents and correspondence and judicial directories. Judge Wallace Thornton. She answered. Lorraine. His voice was different, stripped of the arrogance, the aggression. He sounded tired, defeated. We need to talk. I don't think we have anything to discuss. I'm willing to testify. She almost dropped the phone. Against the partner? Silence. Then, you know about the partner? I know someone's running this operation. Someone invisible. The partner isn't invisible. The partner is just protected. Thornton's voice cracked. I'm dying, Lorraine. Pancreatic cancer. 3 months, maybe 4. I spent 25 years on the bench telling myself I was serving justice, and now I'm going to die, knowing I helped destroy it. Why are you telling me this? Because you were right. Because I should have stopped this years ago. Because maybe if I tell the truth now, something good can come out of the wreckage. He paused. Will you meet with me? Tonight? Just you and me? Every instinct screamed no. This could be a trap. A setup. One last attempt to silence her. But if Thornton was telling the truth, if he could identify the partner, then everything changed. Where? The courthouse, courtroom 4, where this whole thing started. Another pause. Come alone. If I see federal agents, I disappear, and you never hear from me again. She didn't tell Caldwell. She knew she should. She knew the risk. But she also knew that Caldwell would insist on backup, surveillance, a whole tactical team, and Thornton would vanish. At 10 p.m., she drove to the Ashford County Courthouse. The building was dark. Security minimal. A single guard at the main entrance who waved her through without checking ID. She walked down empty hallways, past the file room where everything had started, up the stairs to courtroom 4. The door was open. A single light burned at the judge's bench. Thornton sat in the witness chair. He looked shrunken, diminished, a man being consumed from the inside. Thank you for coming. Lorraine stayed near the door. I'm not here for small talk, Wallace. You said you'd testify. Testify. He nodded slowly. The partner. You want to know who runs the operation? Yes. It's not one person. It's a council. 5 members, each controlling a different sector. Legal, political, construction, media, finance. They meet quarterly. They make decisions by consensus. And they never put anything in writing. Names. I only know 3. Margot Bellamy handled legal. Thomas Aldridge, Spencer's father, handles construction. And the political sector. He stopped. Looked at her with something that might have been pity. The political sector is handled by someone you know. Someone you've trusted for years. Lorraine's heart rate spiked. Who? The county administrator. The one who kept delaying your FOIA requests. The one who controls access to every government building, every public record, every permit and license. Thornton's voice dropped to a whisper. Helen Marsh. Helen Marsh. Lorraine had met her dozens of times. Budget meetings, administrative hearings, courthouse dedication ceremonies. A professional woman in her late 50s. Efficient, respected, unremarkable. She's been running Ashford County for 12 years, Thornton continued. Not officially, she answers to the county commission. But the commission answers to her. She controls the appointments, the contracts, the information flow. Nothing happens in this county without her approval. And she's the one who ordered my interception? She's the one who ordered all of it. The surveillance, the confrontation, the footage deletion. When you started asking questions, she escalated. The battery cables, the threats, the misconduct complaint, all her. Why? What's her stake in Ashford Development? She owns 28%. Silent ownership, buried under 3 layers of shell companies. She's been using county resources to enrich herself for over a decade. Thornton coughed, a wet, rattling sound. And she's never going to face consequences. She will if you testify. I'm dying, Lorraine. My testimony is worthless. They'll say I was confused, medicated, bitter about being caught. They'll paint me as a corrupt judge trying to shift blame. Then why tell me? Because maybe you can find something I couldn't. Documentary evidence. A witness with more credibility. Something that ties Helen Marsh directly to a specific crime. He stood, steadying himself against the witness stand. I've spent my whole career serving the wrong side. Let me spend what's left helping the right one. A door slammed somewhere in the building. Lorraine spun toward the sound. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Multiple footsteps, moving fast. Did you bring someone? No. Thornton's face went white. Did you? I came alone. The footsteps grew louder, closer. Thornton grabbed her arm. The back exit, through the judge's chambers. Go. What about you? I'm done running. He pushed her toward the side door. Go, find the evidence. Take down Helen Marsh. Lorraine hesitated. Then she ran. She made it through the judge's chambers, down the back stairwell, out through the loading dock. Behind her, she heard shouting, voices she didn't recognize, demanding to know where she had gone. She ran through the parking lot, across the street, into an alley behind a closed restaurant. She didn't stop running until she reached her car. The rental she had picked up after her own vehicle was vandalized. She was shaking when she started the engine, shaking when she pulled onto the highway, shaking when she finally allowed herself to breathe. They had almost had her. Someone had known about the meeting. Someone had sent people to intercept her. Helen Marsh. It had to be. She drove through the night, didn't stop until she reached Jacksonville, until she was sitting in the FBI field office, until Agent Caldwell was staring at her with a mixture of concern and exasperation. You went alone? After everything? I had to. He wouldn't have talked otherwise. And now he's in the wind? I don't know where he is. Lorraine pulled out her phone, showed Caldwell the recording she had made. But I have this. Caldwell listened to Thornton's confession. Every word, every name, every detail about the council, the sectors, Helen Marsh. When it was over, she sat back in her chair. This is significant. It's enough to arrest her. It's enough to investigate her. Arrest requires more. Corroboration, documentary evidence, something that proves Thornton is telling the truth and not just making accusations to save himself. Where do we find that? Caldwell was quiet for a moment. Then she opened her laptop, typed something, turned the screen toward Lorraine. 3 years ago, the county commissioned an audit of municipal contracts. The auditor found irregularities, payments to shell companies, no-bid contracts, missing documentation. The report was never released. Helen Marsh buried it. Helen Marsh was appointed to oversee the response to the audit. The auditor resigned 2 weeks later, moved out of state, left no forwarding address. Do we know where the auditor is now? Caldwell typed again. Portland, Oregon, changed her name. But we found her 6 months ago when we started investigating Ashford Development. Has she talked to you? She refused, said she was done with Ashford, done with Florida, done with anything connected to that place. Caldwell met Lorraine's eyes. But she might talk to you. The flight to Portland took 5 hours. Lorraine spent most of it reviewing the file on Catherine Bloom, former name Catherine Winters, former county auditor, former resident of Ashford County, until she had fled in the middle of the night 3 years ago. The woman who answered the door of a small craftsman house in northeast Portland looked nothing like the professional photo in her file. Her hair was gray now, worn long. She was thinner, older, with the watchful eyes of someone who had learned to be afraid. Catherine Winters? That's not my name anymore. I know. I'm Judge Lorraine Whitmore, from Ashford County. I need your help. Catherine's face went pale. She started to close the door. Lorraine put her hand on the frame. Helen Marsh is about to get away with everything. Everything she did to the county, to the workers who died, to the people she silenced. I can stop her, but only if you help me. I can't help you. I can't help anyone. You already helped. The audit you conducted, you found the truth. You documented everything. And they destroyed it. They destroyed the report, the files, the backups. There's nothing left. Is that true? Catherine was silent. You were a good auditor. Thorough. Careful. You spent 18 months documenting corruption at the highest levels of county government. Lorraine lowered her voice. I don't believe you walked away without keeping a copy. Catherine's hand trembled on the door. They threatened my family. My daughter was in college. They told me they knew her schedule, her dorm room, her boyfriend's address. They said accidents happen to young people all the time. I understand. No, you don't. Tears were forming in Catherine's eyes. I had evidence. I had everything. and I chose my daughter's life over justice. I chose to run instead of fight. I'm not judging you. Then why are you here? Because the people who threatened your daughter are the same people who tried to destroy me. And they're still hurting people, still killing people. Lorraine held out a card, Agent Caldwell's contact information. The FBI can protect you, can protect your family, and together we can make sure Helen Marsh never hurts anyone again. Catherine looked at the card, at Lorraine, at the quiet street where she had built a new life, far from everything she had fled. Wait here. She closed the door. Lorraine stood on the porch, watching the minutes tick by on her phone. 5 minutes, 10, 15. The door opened again. Catherine held a cardboard box. Inside, folders, thumb drives, printed documents. I kept everything. Every spreadsheet, every email, every contract. I told myself it was insurance, that if they ever came for me, I would have leverage. She handed the box to Lorraine. I've been waiting 3 years for someone to come for it. The return flight felt like a victory parade. Lorraine sat with the box on her lap, afraid to let it out of her sight. Inside were 3 years of documented corruption, enough to bring down Helen Marsh, the council, everything. When she landed in Jacksonville, Agent Caldwell was waiting at the gate. She gave you the documents? All of them. Caldwell exhaled slowly. Then it's over. We have enough. When? Arrest warrants are being drafted now. We move tomorrow morning. The takedown was coordinated across 3 states. Helen Marsh was arrested at her home at 6 a.m., still in her bathrobe, protesting that there had been some mistake. Thomas Aldridge was taken at his construction company office. The 2 remaining council members, a media executive in Tampa and a financier in Miami, were arrested simultaneously. Lorraine watched it all from the FBI field office, surrounded by agents who had worked this case for over a year. You know you're going to have to testify, Caldwell said. I know. This is going to be a circus. National media, congressional inquiries, reform committees. Your face is going to be everywhere. I know that too. Are you ready? Lorraine thought about the file room, the morning she had been called honey and directed to the family waiting area, the moment when she had walked past the bar and taken her seat on the bench. I've been ready my whole life. 6 months later, the trial of Helen Marsh concluded in federal district court in Jacksonville. The jury deliberated for 4 days before returning guilty verdicts on 17 counts: racketeering, wire fraud, bribery, obstruction of justice. Sentencing was scheduled for the following month. Prosecutors requested 25 years. Margot Bellamy had pleaded guilty 3 months earlier, 10 years in exchange for testimony against the council. Spencer Aldridge received 5 years in a separate proceeding. Boyd Kemper, 18 months plus permanent revocation of his security license. Janine Pratt received probation and community service. She had cooperated fully from the beginning. The judge, a visiting jurist from Tampa, had noted her willingness to help bring down the conspiracy. Judge Wallace Thornton died before the trial began, pancreatic cancer, just as he had predicted. His testimony, preserved in a videotaped deposition, was played for the jury over 2 days. He named names, described meetings, detailed the structure of the conspiracy. It was enough. Lorraine's suspension had been lifted 2 months after Helen Marsh's arrest. The Judicial Qualifications Commission reviewed her case, found no merit to Thornton's accusations, and recommended immediate reinstatement. Her record was cleared, her reputation restored. On the day she returned to the bench, she found flowers waiting in her chambers. A small card. Welcome back, Your Honor. The court staff. She sat at her desk, looked at her law degree, her bar certificate, her judicial commission, all the pieces of paper that said she belonged here. Then she opened her notebook, a new one, leather-bound, waiting to be filled with documentation of whatever came next, and began to write. 3 weeks after the verdict, she received a final piece of mail. Plain envelope. No return address. Postmarked from a small town in Montana she had never heard of. Inside, a single photograph. It showed a woman standing on a mountain trail, face turned toward the sun, expression peaceful. Catherine Bloom. Catherine Winters. Whoever she was now. Free. Safe. Living the life she had fled to find. On the back, in neat handwriting, "Thank you for finishing what I couldn't." Lorraine placed the photograph in her desk drawer, beside the thumb drive that had started everything. That evening, she stayed late in her chambers. The courthouse was quiet. Staff gone. Only the security guard downstairs and the hum of the climate control system. She pulled out her phone, scrolled to the number she had saved months ago, never used. Derek Okonkwo answered on the second ring. "Judge Whitmore, I've been wondering when you'd call. Your story, the one the Gazette killed. What about it? I know a few editors at national outlets, people who might be interested in a deep investigation of corporate capture of local media. Silence on the line. Then, are you offering to be a source? I'm offering to point you in the right direction. Off the record. No attribution. Why? She looked out the window. The parking lot where Boyd Kemper had stopped her all those months ago. The entrance where Spencer Aldridge had demanded she leave. Because the story isn't over. Helen Marsh was the tip of the iceberg. There are Ashford Development Partners in every county in this state, every state in this country. The system that allowed this to happen, it's still intact. And you want to tear it down. I want to document it. Documentation creates records. Records create patterns. Patterns create cases. She could almost hear him smiling. Cases create change. Sometimes. If we're lucky. If we're persistent. I'm in. Derek's voice was energized now. When do we start? Lorraine looked at her notebook, at the empty pages waiting to be filled. We already have. She hung up, gathered her things, walked through the darkened hallways of the courthouse she had served for 12 years. At the front entrance, she paused, looked at the inscription carved above the doors, words she had passed thousands of times without really seeing. Equal justice under law. Not a statement of fact, a statement of aspiration, a goal that required constant work, constant vigilance, constant documentation of the forces that sought to undermine it. She had learned something in these past months, something about the system she had dedicated her life to serving. The system protected itself, always had, always would. But sometimes, rarely, imperfectly, after exhausting battles and bitter compromises, the system could be forced to change, not through dramatic confrontations, not through single heroes who fixed everything overnight, but through documentation, through persistence, through refusing to let the silence win. She stepped out into the evening air. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Behind her, the courthouse stood dark and quiet. Ahead of her, the work continued. Anland. 3 months later, the Department of Justice announced a pattern or practice investigation into Ashford County's courthouse operations. The investigation is ongoing. Margot Bellamy was disbarred by the Florida Bar. Spencer Aldridge's disbarment hearing is scheduled for next spring. Helen Marsh received 18 years in federal prison. She has filed an appeal. The 3 workers who died on Ashford Development construction sites have been memorialized in a new county policy requiring independent safety inspections on all municipal projects. Judge Lorraine Whitmore continues to serve on the Circuit Court of the 4th Judicial Circuit. Her caseload includes 2 additional civil rights matters stemming from the FBI investigation. And somewhere in Portland, Oregon, a woman named Catherine Bloom tends her garden and reads about the trial in newspapers that finally, after 3 years, are printing the truth she tried to tell. Epilogue. 18 months later. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning in October. Lorraine found it in her courthouse mailbox between a motion for summary judgment and a request for judicial recusal, the 3rd such request this month from defendants who had heard her name and decided they wanted someone else. Plain white envelope, handwritten address, no return information. She recognized the handwriting immediately. Wallace Thornton had been dead for 14 months, but his widow, Eleanor, had maintained sporadic contact. Holiday cards, occasional updates about the grandchildren Wallace had never lived to see graduate. This was different. Inside the envelope, a single sheet of paper, folded around a small brass key. "Dear Judge Whitmore," the letter began, "Wallace asked me to send this to you after the trial concluded and enough time had passed. He said you would know what to do with it. Safe Deposit Box 1147, First National Bank of Ashford. The box is in your name. He transferred ownership before he died. I don't know what's inside. I'm not sure I want to know. But Wallace trusted you to finish what he started. I hope the trust was deserved. Eleanor Thornton." Lorraine held the key in her palm. Small, heavy, cold. Another thread to pull. The bank manager recognized her immediately. "Judge Whitmore, we don't often see you in person. I need to access a safe deposit box, number 1147. "Of course, right this way." The vault was in the basement, climate-controlled, security cameras in every corner, the kind of place where people stored things they didn't want found. Box 1147 was larger than she expected. The manager left her alone in a private viewing room, the door locked behind her. Lorraine opened the box. Inside, 3 leather journals, a stack of photographs, and a sealed envelope marked insurance. The journals were Wallace Thornton's, personal records dating back 15 years, meeting notes, names, dates, amounts. A meticulous accounting of his participation in the conspiracy he had eventually helped destroy. The photographs were surveillance images. Thornton meeting with Helen Marsh. Thornton accepting an envelope from Thomas Aldridge. Thornton shaking hands with people Lorraine didn't recognize, but whose faces she photographed with her phone for later identification. The sealed envelope contained something else entirely: bank records, wire transfers, a paper trail connecting Ashford Development Partners to accounts in the Cayman Islands, Switzerland, and Singapore. Money that had never been recovered. Money that the FBI didn't know existed. At the bottom of the envelope, a handwritten note in Thornton's spidery script. They told me this was my protection, my guarantee that I would never be prosecuted. They were wrong. I'm giving it to you because the money belongs to the people they stole it from. Find it, return it, and when you do, remember that even the worst of us can choose differently in the end. WT. She called Agent Caldwell from the bank parking lot. I have something you need to see. What kind of something? The kind that's going to reopen your investigation. Silence on the line. Then, where are you? First National Bank of Ashford. And Patricia, bring forensic accountants. If you thought the story was over, you were wrong. Subscribe now. The real conspiracy went deeper than anyone knew. The offshore accounts contained $47 million. $47 million accumulated over 12 years of fraud, bribery, and theft. $47 million that Helen Marsh and her counsel had siphoned from county contracts, construction projects, and municipal investments. The FBI's forensic team spent 3 months tracing the money. They found payments to judges in 4 Florida counties. They found bribes to state legislators. They found a network of corruption that extended far beyond Ashford, a web of influence that had been spinning for over a decade. New indictments followed: 3 more judges, 2 state representatives, a county commissioner in Tampa, an assistant attorney general who had helped bury complaints. The newspapers called it the biggest public corruption case in Florida history. Lorraine called it a start. The civil recovery process took another 8 months, $47 million, distributed among the victims of Ashford Development schemes, the families of workers who had died on unsafe construction sites, employees who had been wrongfully terminated, taxpayers who had funded contracts that existed only on paper. Marcus Webb, the building inspector whose lawsuit had started everything, received $2.3 million. He used part of it to establish a foundation for workplace safety advocacy. The family of Carlos Mendez, the 23-year-old who had fallen from improperly secured scaffolding, received $1.8 million. His mother used the money to put his younger siblings through college. Lorraine attended the check presentation ceremony, watched families receive money that could never compensate for what they had lost, but might at least provide some measure of security. After the ceremony, a young woman approached her. Early 20s, dark hair, eyes that looked familiar. You're Judge Whitmore. Yes. I'm Maria Mendez. Carlos was my brother. Lorraine didn't know what to say. What could anyone say? I read about what happened to you, Maria continued. How they tried to stop you. How you kept going anyway. She paused. Carlos would have liked you. He was stubborn too. I'm sorry I never got to meet him. Me too, Maria's voice caught. But because of what you did, because you didn't give up. My mother can sleep at night. My little brother can go to college. We can move on. Not forget, never forget, but move on. She hugged Lorraine, brief, fierce, unexpected. Then she walked away to join her family. Lorraine stood alone in the empty conference room, feeling the weight of everything she had carried for the past 2 years finally begin to lift. The reforms came slowly. That was the hardest part, knowing that meaningful change would take years, decades, generations. Knowing that the system would resist, adapt, find new ways to protect itself. But change did come. The Florida Supreme Court adopted new recusal requirements, mandatory disclosure of financial interests, automatic disqualification for conflicts involving parties before the court. The rules Lorraine had cited during her confrontation with Spencer Aldridge were strengthened, clarified, given teeth. The state legislature passed the Ashford Accountability Act, named, ironically, for the county that had exemplified everything wrong with local government. The act required independent audits of municipal contracts, whistleblower protections for employees who reported safety violations, and criminal penalties for officials who destroyed public records. The FBI established a permanent public corruption task force in Jacksonville. Agent Caldwell was promoted to lead it. And in Ashford County itself, the courthouse implemented new security protocols. Random screening for all visitors, regardless of appearance, regardless of perceived status. Body cameras for security officers. Automatic preservation of all surveillance footage for a minimum of 90 days. Small changes, incremental progress. Nothing that would prevent corruption entirely, nothing ever could, but foundations for accountability, tools for the next person who refused to stay silent. Derek Okonkwo's investigation ran as a 12-part series in the Washington Post. Captured: How Corporate Money Corrupted a Florida County and What It Means for America. The series documented not just the Ashford conspiracy, but the broader pattern of corporate influence over local institutions. Media companies purchased to silence critics, judges appointed by governors who received campaign contributions from the defendants who would appear before them, a system designed to protect wealth and punish anyone who questioned it. The series won a Pulitzer Prize. Lorraine was quoted extensively, but she declined interview requests for television. Her face had been everywhere during the trial. She had no desire to become a celebrity. She was a judge. Her job was to decide cases, not to seek attention, but she did agree to one interview, a podcast hosted by law students at Howard University, her alma mater. "What advice would you give to young lawyers who want to change the system?" the student host asked. Lorraine thought about the question for a long moment. Document everything. Build relationships with people who share your values. And understand that change is slow, painfully, frustratingly slow. You won't fix everything. You might not fix anything in your lifetime. But if you create a record, if you establish precedents, if you train the next generation to continue the work, then maybe eventually the system moves. That sounds discouraging. It's realistic. Discouragement is a choice. She paused. The people who tried to stop me, they were counting on my discouragement. They were counting on me to give up, to decide it wasn't worth the fight. Every time I didn't give up, I took power away from them. That's not discouraging. That's the whole point. 3 years after the incident in the file room, Lorraine received an unexpected visitor. She was in her chambers, reviewing a sentencing memorandum, when her clerk knocked. "Judge Whitmore? There's someone here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's important." "Who is it?" "She says her name is Janine Pratt." Lorraine set down her pen. She hadn't seen Janine since the trial, since watching her testify about the conspiracy she had helped enable. "Send her in." Janine looked different. Older, certainly. 3 years would do that, but also calmer, steadier. The nervous energy that had characterized her during the trial was gone. "Judge Whitmore, thank you for seeing me. Have a seat." Janine sat in the chair across from the desk, the same chair where defendants' lawyers sat when they came to argue motions, the same chair where witnesses sat when they gave depositions. "I wanted to apologize, in person, for what I did." "You apologized at the trial." "That was for the record. This is for you." Janine met her eyes. "I looked at you that morning in the file room, and I saw someone who didn't matter, someone I could dismiss, someone whose dignity wasn't worth protecting." Her voice cracked. "I was wrong, and I've spent 3 years trying to understand how I became the kind of person who could do that." Lorraine was quiet for a moment. "Did you find an answer?" "Partially. I was afraid. I was compromised. I had made so many small choices that added up to something terrible, and by the time I realized what I was doing, I felt like I couldn't stop." Janine shook her head. "But that's not really an excuse. Other people were afraid too. Other people were compromised. They didn't all choose to hurt people." "No, they didn't." "I'm working now as a victim advocate at the domestic violence shelter on Elm Street. I help people navigate the legal system, file restraining orders, understand their rights, find resources." She paused. "It doesn't make up for what I did. Nothing can make up for that. But it's something." Lorraine studied the woman across from her. The woman who had looked her in the eye and lied. The woman who had helped orchestrate her humiliation. The woman who was now, apparently, trying to become someone else. "I forgive you." Janine's eyes widened. "You do?" "I do. Not because you deserve it. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But because holding on to anger takes energy I need for other things." Lorraine leaned forward. "But I want you to understand something. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean what you did was acceptable. It means I'm choosing to move forward instead of staying stuck in that file room forever." "I understand." "Good." Lorraine stood, extended her hand. "Good luck with your work, Janine. I hope you find whatever peace you're looking for." Janine shook her hand, held on for a moment longer than necessary. "Thank you, Judge Whitmore, for everything." She left. Lorraine sat back down at her desk, picked up her pen, returned to the sentencing memorandum. The work continued. This story isn't just entertainment. It's a reminder that accountability is possible. Share it with someone who needs to hear that. On the 5th anniversary of the incident, Lorraine received one final piece of correspondence. It came from the Florida Supreme Court. An official letter, embossed seal, the kind of communication that usually meant trouble. She opened it with steady hands. Dear Judge Whitmore, on behalf of the Florida Supreme Court and the Judicial Qualifications Commission, we are pleased to inform you that you have been selected to receive the Judge John W. Prunty Award for Judicial Excellence. This award recognizes judges who have demonstrated exceptional commitment to the rule of law, ethical conduct, and the administration of justice under difficult circumstances. Your actions during the Ashford County corruption investigation exemplified the highest standards of judicial integrity. Your willingness to document misconduct, pursue accountability through proper channels, and maintain your commitment to justice despite personal and professional attacks has set a standard for judges throughout our state. The award ceremony will be held on March 15th at the Florida Supreme Court building in Tallahassee. We hope you will be able to attend. Lorraine read the letter twice. Then she set it aside and returned to her case files. Awards were nice. Recognition was appreciated. But the work was what mattered. The work was always what mattered. She did attend the ceremony, stood at the podium in the ornate chamber of the Florida Supreme Court, looking out at an audience of judges, lawyers, legislators, and journalists. Her family sat in the front row. Her sister, her nieces, cousins she hadn't seen in years. The Chief Justice introduced her with a summary of the Ashford case, the investigation, the trial, the reforms that had followed. Then it was her turn to speak. She had prepared remarks, 3 pages of grateful acknowledgments and humble reflections. She set them aside. 5 years ago, I walked into my own courthouse and was told I didn't belong. I was stopped at security, refused access to records, called honey, and directed to the family waiting area. I was threatened with contempt charges and physical removal in a building where I had served for 12 years. She paused, let the silence settle. Nothing that happened to me was unusual. It happens every day in courthouses across this country. To lawyers, to litigants, to witnesses, to anyone who doesn't match the expectations of those in power. What was unusual was that I had documentation. I had witnesses. I had a platform from which to demand accountability. Most people don't have those things. Most people suffer in silence because they know that speaking up will cost them more than staying quiet. This award isn't really for me. It's for everyone who couldn't speak up. Everyone who was dismissed, degraded, denied access to justice because of how they looked or where they came from. Everyone who knew the system was broken but didn't have the power to fix it. I accepted this award on their behalf, and I'm using this platform to say what they can't say. We see you. We believe you. And we won't stop fighting until the promise carved above every courthouse door, equal justice under law, becomes reality instead of aspiration. She stepped back from the podium. The applause started slowly, then built, then filled the chamber. Lorraine didn't smile, didn't wave, didn't perform gratitude. She simply nodded and returned to her seat. That night, back in Ashford, she stopped by the courthouse. The building was closed, locked, dark, but she had her key, the same key she had carried for 15 years now. She walked through the empty hallways, past the file room where everything had started, past courtroom 4, where she had revealed her identity to the people who had tried to destroy her, past the chambers where she had documented 17 pages of misconduct in a single morning. She climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, opened the door to her office. Everything was as she had left it. The law books, the case files, the photographs of her grandmother, who had been the first lawyer in their family. On her desk, a new leather notebook, the 4th one since the incident. Each page filled with careful documentation of the cases she had decided, the patterns she had observed, the threads that might someday become investigations. She sat down, opened the notebook to a fresh page. Tomorrow there would be new cases, new challenges, new opportunities to either uphold justice or let it slip away. The system still protected itself. The system always would. But Lorraine Whitmore had learned something important over the past 5 years, something about power and persistence and the slow, grinding work of change. The system could be moved, not easily, not quickly, not by one person acting alone, but it could be moved. And she would spend the rest of her career proving it. She picked up her pen, wrote the date at the top of the page, then she began to document. The end. Judge Lorraine Whitmore served on the Circuit Court of the 4th Judicial Circuit for another 12 years before her retirement. She was subsequently appointed to the Florida Judicial Ethics Advisory Committee, where she helped develop training programs on implicit bias and professional conduct. The Ashford Accountability Act has been adopted in modified form by 17 other states. Agent Patricia Caldwell retired from the FBI in 2031. Her Public Corruption Task Force has secured convictions against 43 public officials across Florida. Derek Okonkwo continues to investigate corporate influence over public institutions. His most recent series examined judicial elections in Texas. Catherine Bloom, formerly Catherine Winters, published a memoir in 2029 titled The Auditor's Conscience. Proceeds support whistleblower protection organizations. And somewhere in Ashford County, a young lawyer reads about the case, takes notes, files away details for later. The documentation continues.
Thank you for taking the time to watch this video today. If you found the content helpful, please remember to like and subscribe so you won't miss our upcoming episodes. If you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to leave a comment below. We are always here to listen.